One of the people closest to Bob Marley. What are your reactions to his death?
Well, I've been close to many people who die, and I don't react to death.
Ready for a story about friendship, music, and some serious drama? At 42, Peter Tosh finally spoke out about the night Bob Marley stepped in to calm the storm between them. These reggae legends didn't always see eye to eye, but their feud and eventual peace shaped the history of reggae in ways fans still talk about today. In this video, we'll break down what caused the tension and how Bob's gesture helped heal one of music's most famous rivalries. Grab your headphones, because this is a story you won't want to miss. From Trenchtown to Trailblazer. Peter Tosh didn't learn music the usual way, no sheet music, no dusty piano lessons, and definitely no sing-along nursery rhymes. Instead, he picked up tunes by watching a man play all afternoon, memorizing every move, and then recreating the song perfectly by ear. When someone asked him who taught him, Tosh's simple answer was, "You did." Born Winston Hubert McIntosh on October 19, 1944, in Westmoreland, Jamaica, Tosh's early years were anything but easy. Both his parents abandoned him, and he was passed from one relative to another like a hot potato nobody wanted to hold. But instead of letting that break him, young Winston used it as fuel to power his fire. When his aunt died when he was just 15, Tosh made a bold move to Kingston's Trenchtown neighborhood, a rough-and-tumble place buzzing with raw musical energy. This was the training ground for many reggae icons, and Tosh was about to join their ranks. Before fully diving into music, Tosh had some schooling in Bluefields and even worked briefly as a welder, but those sparks from welding never compared to the fire in his heart for music. That fire found its match in Joe Higgs, a local vocal coach with a big heart who took Tosh under his wing. Thanks to Higgs, Tosh met two other future legends, Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer. Together, they weren't just making music, they were shaping history. At first, their performances were far from glamorous, mostly street corners, backyards, and local dances. Yet, even in those humble settings, the chemistry between Tosh, Marley, and Wailer was undeniable. Tosh brought a sharp, bold edge to their sound. Marley added smooth, melodic charm. Wailer contributed deep, soulful passion. Under Joe Higgs's guidance, they learned to blend their voices and talents into something powerful and unique. Around this time, Winston McIntosh gave himself a new name, Peter Tosh. The new name carried weight, grit, and a rebellious spirit that matched his bold personality. Tosh wasn't interested in just entertaining crowds. He wanted his music to challenge the system and speak truth to power. By the early 1960s, the trio had found their voice, and their message was clear: fight injustice, stand strong, and be proud. The world was slowly starting to listen. Their music wasn't just about catchy rhythms. It was about real stories, real struggles, and real change. Peter Tosh's early journey from a troubled youth to a reggae revolutionary was full of twists, but it laid the foundation for a career that would inspire generations. The same man who learned to play music by ear would go on to shake up the music scene with his fearless voice and uncompromising stance. If you want to understand the roots of reggae and the power behind its message, you can't ignore Peter Tosh's story. It's as raw and real as it gets. Building a reggae legacy. Before Legalize It became the battle cry for cannabis advocates worldwide, Peter Tosh was the powerhouse behind one of reggae's most iconic groups. By 1964, Tosh, Bob Marley, and Bunny Wailer officially formed the Wailing Wailers. At this point, Tosh wasn't just along for the ride, he was the musical backbone. A self-taught guitarist and keyboard player, Tosh's skills were so impressive that Bunny Wailer admitted his talent pushed the entire group to improve their game. In other words, Tosh wasn't just a player, he was the teacher raising the bar. Their first big hit, Simmer Down, was a ska anthem that rocked Jamaica's streets, but fame wasn't enough to hold the original lineup together. By late 1965, members began to drift away, and Marley temporarily relocated to the United States. When Marley returned in 1967, he brought a new vision. The trio's connection deepened through their shared embrace of Rastafari beliefs, and their sound evolved with it. Shedding the wailing from their name, they rebranded simply as the Wailers, marking a new chapter. Tosh proudly claimed he taught Marley how to play guitar, and Bunny Wailer backed that up. Their musical journey gained momentum thanks to influential allies like Danny Sims, Johnny Nash, and the legendary Lee Scratch Perry. Together, they refined their sound, moving away from ska's upbeat tempo toward the slower, more soulful reggae beats. Tracks like Soul Rebel and Dubby Conqueror were statements that helped define reggae's distinctive vibe. The group's lineup got stronger in 1970 when the Barrett brothers joined, adding tight rhythms and solid grooves. Their 1971 release, Best of the Wailers, showed the world their growing maturity. But behind the scenes, tensions quietly brewed. Signing with Island Records seemed like a big win, and albums like Catch a Fire and Burnin' in 1973 brought international attention. Yet, Tosh wasn't happy. Despite his contributions, he often felt pushed to the sidelines. The situation got worse when Island started releasing Tosh's solo work without his approval, mislabeling him as Peter Tosh. Creative clashes piled up, and Tosh grew increasingly frustrated. Life threw Tosh a harsh blow when he survived a terrible car accident that claimed the life of his girlfriend. Personal tragedy and professional disappointment collided when Island rejected his solo album. That rejection was the breaking point. By 1974, Tosh and Bunny Wailer had had enough. They left the group, choosing to carve their own paths. Tosh didn't hold back on calling out the music industry's power players. He sarcastically nicknamed Island Records boss Chris Blackwell White Worst, signaling his disgust. From there, Tosh launched his solo career with CBS and later, the Rolling Stones label. He vowed never to water down his message again. This bold move set Tosh on a new course, one where his fierce voice for justice and uncompromising stance on cannabis legalization could take center stage. Legalize It wasn't just a song, it was a declaration, marking the start of Peter Tosh's solo legacy and the moment he truly owned his voice. Rebel with a Riff. When Peter Tosh dropped his solo debut, Legalize It, in 1976, it wasn't just another album release. It was a blazing announcement to the world. The title track quickly became the unofficial anthem for cannabis advocates, Rastafarians, and reggae fans everywhere. Tosh wasn't out to chase radio play or climb the charts. He had a clear mission: to broadcast a message loud and clear, without sugarcoating or backing down. Recording at the famed Treasure Isle Studios gave Tosh the perfect backdrop to craft his sound, but he didn't stop there. To bring his music fully to life, he created his own backing band, Word, Sound, and Power. This crew became his trusted companions on tours and in the studio, delivering the punch and soul Tosh's music demanded. His follow-up album, Equal Rights, came out in 1997, making one thing obvious: Tosh wasn't here to play by the industry's rules. The album featured Get Up, Stand Up, a powerful anthem co-written with Bob Marley, along with his fierce take on Stepping Razor. Tosh was no mere musician, he was a rebel with a cause. Then came 1978, a year that turned up the volume on Tosh's career. Signing with Rolling Stones Records, he released Bush Doctor, which featured none other than Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, lending their legendary talents. The duet Don't Look Back introduced Tosh to a wider audience, but the important part was that he never toned down his message. If anything, he amplified it. One moment from that year became legendary and risky. At the One Love Peace concert, Tosh famously lit a massive joint on stage while calling out Jamaican politicians Michael Manley and Edward Seaga for their failure to legalize marijuana. It was bold, fearless, and it painted a big target on his back. Not long after, Tosh was arrested in Halfway Tree for allegedly smoking in public and resisting arrest. Worse yet, reports surfaced that he was brutally beaten while in custody, but Tosh refused to be silenced. Despite the pressure, he kept pushing forward. Albums like Mystic Man, 1979, and Wanted Dread and Alive, 1981, kept challenging the status quo and shining a light on injustice. While he never quite reached the global superstardom of Bob Marley, Tosh's voice remained one of reggae's most raw and uncompromising. His boldness even stirred controversy at New York's 1979 No Nukes concerts. Wearing a Palestinian keffiyeh and lighting another joint during the Jewish New Year didn't win him many fans. As a result, he was cut from the live album and concert film. Still, that keffiyeh became a lasting symbol of his fearless and defiant style. By 1984, after releasing Mama Africa, Tosh took a step back and moved to Africa, searching for spiritual renewal and working to free himself from contracts he felt tied him to apartheid-era South Africa. Even there, he stayed vocal against apartheid, performing at rallies and recording powerful tracks like Apartheid and Fight On. His final album, No Nuclear War, 1987, earned him a Grammy and cemented his place as reggae's uncompromising voice against injustice. Peter Tosh's solo journey was never easy, but it was always honest, bold, and unfiltered. His music was more than sound, it was a movement, and his message still echoes loud today. The man behind the music. Peter Tosh wasn't your average reggae star, far from it. Sure, he was known for his fiery lyrics and relentless activism, but beneath that tough exterior was a playful, unpredictable spirit that kept audiences guessing. Imagine this, Tosh riding a unicycle on stage, hopping and grinning like it was the most natural thing in the world. That kind of stage presence wasn't just showmanship. It was Tosh's way of blending humor, charm, and rebellion into one unforgettable package. By the late 1960s, Tosh, Bob Marley, and Bunny Wailer fully embraced Rastafari, but for Tosh, it was more than just a cultural trend or fashion statement. Baptized in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, his faith wasn't something he wore on his sleeve. It was the spiritual backbone of his life. Rastafari shaped not only his music, but also his politics and worldview. For Tosh, this faith was a daily practice, a guide that influenced everything from his lyrics to his activism, pushing him to speak out against injustice and stand firm in his beliefs. But life wasn't all music and spiritual awakening. In 1973, Tosh faced a devastating tragedy when he survived a serious car accident that claimed the life of his girlfriend, Yvonne. The crash left him with deep physical injuries and emotional scars that stayed with him for years. Yet through that heartbreak, Tosh's resilience shone. Later in life, he found stability and support in his long-term relationship with Marlene Brown, who stood by him through the ups and downs of fame and activism. Family was important to Tosh, too. Over the years, he fathered 10 children, each representing different chapters of his life, from his eldest son, Carlos Andrew, born in 1967, to his youngest daughter, Niambi. Though Tosh was a public figure and a rebel, he was also a father whose children carried forward his legacy of passion, courage, and defiance in their own ways. More than just a rebel shouting into a microphone, Peter Tosh was a spiritual seeker on a mission, a family man, and a showman who could balance deep convictions with a sense of fun. Whether he was lighting up a crowd with his powerful calls for justice, or surprising them by riding a unicycle across the stage, Tosh's life was a vivid blend of rebellion and humanity. That rare mix of intensity and playfulness made him a reggae icon whose influence still echoes loud and clear today. A life cut short. Peter Tosh's relentless fight for justice came to a heartbreaking and violent end on September 11, 1987. That day, back in his home in Kingston, Jamaica, Tosh was confronted by 3 armed men demanding money. Among them was Dennis Lepo Loban, a man Tosh had once shown kindness to, even helping after Loban's release from prison. Tragically, that goodwill was met not with gratitude, but with brutal betrayal. When Tosh refused to hand over any cash, the situation quickly escalated. The men took Tosh and his visitors hostage for hours, holding them captive in a terrifying standoff. Fear hung thick in the air as time dragged on, but nothing could have prepared anyone for what came next. The gunmen suddenly opened fire. Peter Tosh was struck instantly, with 2 bullets piercing his head, ending the life of one of reggae's most fearless voices. The attack claimed 2 other lives and left several more wounded, shaking the community to its core. The news sent shockwaves throughout Jamaica and the global reggae community. Here was a man who had dedicated his life to speaking truth to power, challenging injustice, and standing up for the oppressed, silenced in the most violent way by someone he once trusted. It was a tragedy that felt almost impossible to grasp, a cruel twist that robbed the world of a bold and uncompromising voice. Dennis Lepo Loban was later arrested, convicted, and sentenced to death for the murder. However, his sentence was eventually commuted, sparking debates about justice and punishment in Jamaica's legal system. The identities and roles of other suspects remain murky, with many questions left unanswered. The full truth behind the attack never entirely came to light, adding a shadow of mystery and sorrow to Tosh's final chapter. Despite this devastating end, Peter Tosh's spirit and message refuse to be silenced. His fearless voice lives on, echoing in protest songs and movements that challenge oppression worldwide. Every time an artist picks up a microphone to speak out against injustice, Tosh's legacy is there, reminding us that the fight for truth and equality is never in vain. More than just a musician, Tosh was a revolutionary whose courage went beyond music. His life and death remind us that speaking truth to power comes with risks, but it is also the purest form of rebellion. Tosh's legacy stands tall, not because he lived long, but because he refused to back down, no matter the cost. Today, when you hear reggae's defiant beats or witness activism fueled by music, you're hearing the echoes of Peter Tosh's voice. He may have been taken too soon, but his fight continues, inspiring generations to speak out, stand strong, and keep pushing for a world where justice prevails. In the end, that's the truest revolution Peter Tosh ever wanted, and the one he still inspires. What caused the riff? When legends clash, history listens, and the tension between Bob Marley and Peter Tosh is one of reggae's most unforgettable stories. These two giants started as brothers in music and spirit, but a mix of creative differences, personal ambitions, and industry drama drove a wedge between them. Let's break down what caused the rift between Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, and why their split still echoes through reggae history. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer formed the Wailers in the early 1960s, a trio that would change reggae forever. In the beginning, their bond was tight. They shared the same dreams, the same struggles, and the same passion for music rooted in Rastafari beliefs. But as the group gained international fame, differences started to surface. One big cause of tension was creative control. Peter Tosh was a fierce, outspoken artist who wasn't afraid to challenge authority or music industry norms. His lyrics hit hard, often addressing political and social injustices with blunt honesty. Bob Marley, while equally committed to the message, had a more diplomatic style and a broader commercial appeal. As Marley's star rose globally, he began to take the lead creatively, sometimes leaving Tosh feeling sidelined. This shift was especially clear after signing with Island Records in the early 1970s. Albums like Catch a Fire and Burnin' propelled the Wailers into the international spotlight, but also highlighted different approaches within the group. Tosh was frustrated by the way some of his songs were handled, and sometimes released without his approval. Reports of unauthorized releases under a misspelled name, Peter Tosh, didn't help. These slights added fuel to a growing fire. Financial disagreements also played a part. As Marley became the face of the Wailers, Tosh felt his contributions were undervalued both creatively and financially. The music industry's business side can be messy, and Tosh wasn't shy about calling out what he saw as unfair treatment. Personality differences made matters trickier. Bob Marley had a natural charisma and diplomatic approach that made him a unifying figure. Tosh was more confrontational and uncompromising. His rebellious streak meant he often clashed with managers, record labels, and even his own bandmates. While Marley tried to keep the peace, Tosh pushed boundaries, which sometimes led to friction. Despite their growing divide, both men remained committed to reggae and Rastafari's core messages. However, by 1974, the tension reached a breaking point. Tosh and Bunny Wailer left the group to pursue solo careers, leaving Marley to carry the Wailers forward. It wasn't just a falling out, it was a clash of visions. Marley aimed to broaden reggae's reach with a unifying, hopeful sound, while Tosh wanted to keep the music raw, militant, and deeply political. Both approaches shaped reggae's evolution, but their split marked the end of an era. Still, the story isn't all drama. Marley and Tosh respected each other's talents, and their early collaboration laid the foundation for reggae's global success. They influenced generations of musicians and activists, each carrying a piece of the other's spirit. In the end, the rift between Bob Marley and Peter Tosh reminds us that even legendary friendships face challenges, especially when art, politics, and ambition collide. Their split wasn't about hate. It was about two powerful voices seeking different paths in the same fight. And maybe that's what made their stories so unforgettable. Tosh didn't go to the funeral. When a legend passes, the world watches how those closest pay their final respects. But Peter Tosh's absence at Bob Marley's funeral left fans asking one big question: why wasn't Tosh there? The decision stirred controversy, whispers, and even backlash that still echoes today. Let's unpack why Peter Tosh didn't attend Bob Marley's funeral and what that absence really meant. Bob Marley died on May 11, 1981, leaving a massive hole in the reggae world. Marley's funeral, held in Jamaica, was a global event. Thousands gathered to honor the man who had become a symbol of peace, resistance, and hope. Yet among the mourners, one key figure was noticeably missing: Peter Tosh, Marley's longtime friend, bandmate, and fellow reggae icon. At first glance, Tosh's absence seemed strange. After all, the two had started together in the Wailers and shared a deep history. But the story is more complicated than a simple no-show. Tosh and Marley's relationship had been rocky for years by the time Marley died. Their split in the mid-1970s wasn't just about business. It was about creative differences, personal clashes, and diverging visions for their music and activism. Tosh was outspoken, often critical of Marley's growing commercial success and his approach to politics. Tosh believed Marley was softening the message to reach a wider audience, while Tosh stayed fiercely militant and unapologetically radical. When Marley passed, Tosh was reportedly abroad, touring in the United States. Some say he was informed late about the funeral plans, making it difficult to rearrange his schedule. Others suggest Tosh deliberately chose not to attend. Given their complicated history, it's likely both practical and personal reasons played a role. But the real firestorm came from how fans and the public reacted. Many felt Tosh should have been there to pay his respects, given their shared roots and Tosh's place in reggae history. Some viewed his absence as a betrayal or a sign of lingering bitterness. Rumors and harsh words circulated, painting Tosh as cold or uncaring. Tosh didn't stay silent. In interviews after Marley's death, he expressed his grief and respect, but also defended his absence. He pointed out that touring commitments and the sudden nature of Marley's death made it hard to be there. More importantly, Tosh emphasized that mourning and honoring Marley didn't have to happen only at a funeral. His music, activism, and memories carried the spirit of Marley in a different way. This response helped soften some criticism, but the backlash lingered. Fans can be fiercely loyal and quick to judge, especially when emotions run high. Tosh's complicated relationship with Marley meant he was stuck between being a brother-in-arms and a rival with differences too big to ignore publicly. In the years since, many reggae historians and fans have revisited this moment with more understanding. The tension between Tosh and Marley reflected two powerful personalities navigating fame, politics, and artistic direction. Missing the funeral was a small part of a much larger layered story. In the end, Peter Tosh's absence at Bob Marley's funeral reminds us that relationships, even legendary ones, are complicated. Mourning can take many forms, and respect isn't always shown in public ceremonies. Tosh's way of honoring Marley may not have fit everyone's expectations, but it was genuine in its own right. If anything, this moment highlights the complexity behind reggae's biggest icons, their struggles, their bonds, and their humanity. And maybe that's the real story worth remembering. How they made peace. When longtime friends become rivals and rivals find their way back, it's a story worth telling, and the night Bob Marley and Peter Tosh made peace is one of reggae's most unforgettable moments. After a 7-year feud that rocked the reggae world, these two legends reunited on stage in 1978, showing everyone that even the deepest splits can be healed. The Wailers started as close friends growing up in Jamaica's Trenchtown, bound by a shared love of music and a dream to change the world. By the late 1960s, they were Jamaica's hottest band with hit singles and albums topping the charts. But success came with challenges. In 1973, tensions boiled over when their record label, Island Records, appeared to promote Bob Marley as the leader, causing friction within the group. Bunny Wailer quietly stepped away by refusing to tour, while Peter Tosh's more fiery personality led to a dramatic backstage fight with Marley in England. Tosh walked off the stage and quit the band on the spot, leaving Marley to carry on alone. After their split, the three Wailers all pursued solo careers. Bunny Wailer's relationship with Marley stayed smooth, but Tosh and Marley's was strained, polite on the surface but tense underneath. Over the years, both men released songs thought to be aimed at each other, like Marley's Who the Cap Fit and Tosh's The Toughest. They even reunited briefly for charity shows in 1974 and 1975. but those performances lacked warmth and felt more like obligations than true reunions. Everything changed in 1978 during the North American leg of Marley's Kaya album tour. By then, Tosh had signed with the Rolling Stones record label and was opening for the legendary rock band on their US tour. Fate brought their tours to California at the same time, with Marley and the Wailers scheduled for several shows, including one at the Burbank Starlight Amphitheater. The concert that night was electric, packed with ecstatic fans and celebrities like Diana Ross and Mick Jagger. As Marley finished his set, the crowd erupted for an encore. He chose to perform Get Up, Stand Up, a song co-written with Tosh, featuring verses from both of them. Just as Marley was about to finish his verse, Tosh suddenly appeared on stage, storming the spotlight with his own verse. The moment was magical. Tosh delivered his part with such smooth grace and energy that it felt like the reunion had been planned all along. Marley beamed with delight, and the crowd went wild. After the song, the two legends embraced, acting as if the years of bitterness never happened. Backstage, their joy was just as real. Both clapped hands and laughed, with Tosh joking, "Why the Pope feel that one?" showing the deep friendship still alive beneath the rivalry. That night marked the official end of their feud. Afterwards, Marley headed to Europe to continue his tour, while Tosh went to Anaheim to open for the Rolling Stones. Inspired by the evening, Tosh began writing a song called Here We Are Together Again, a hopeful anthem for the trio's possible future reunion. Unfortunately, the track never came to life before Marley's death, but it remains a symbol of what could have been, a mature Wailers group making music again on their own terms. That 1978 reconciliation wasn't just about mending fences, it was a powerful reminder that even the fiercest conflicts can be softened by shared history, respect, and the healing power of music. Bob Marley and Peter Tosh proved that sometimes the strongest bonds withstand time and trials, and when reunited, can create moments that echo through history. When legends collide and then come together, the story is never just about music. It's about heart, pride, and the power of brotherhood. The rivalry between Peter Tosh and Bob Marley showed us how even the closest friends can face tough battles, fueled by ambition, creative differences, and the pressures of fame. Tosh and Marley's clash and comeback teach us something important. Growth isn't always a straight line. Sometimes it takes falling apart to realize what really matters. Their ability to reconcile, even after years of tension, highlights the strength of their bond and the unbreakable spirit of reggae music. So, as you listen to their songs and feel the rhythm, remember the story behind the music, the highs, the lows, and the moments of forgiveness. Because at the end of the day, it's that mix of conflict and compassion that makes their legacy timeless and their message unforgettable. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep the music playing.